Good morning, Instagram. We've got another Instagram Live this morning. Today, we're going to be talking with Diego Mireles Duran about their solo exhibition, Como Que Buscaba. I am going to pan around and invite Diego in to join. This is a quick shot of Diego's exhibition, and we'll talk about it more. Hey, Diego. How are you?
Hey, I'm
Nice. Yeah, I was
cozy. How are
thinking
you?
about our conversation this morning and how you said you'd probably take it outside, and I was like, it's perfect weather to hang out.
Yeah, it's really nice making some tea and just hanging out
I
with some
love
chickens
that.
and yeah.
Um, well, I'm excited to talk about your show. I've got the candles lit and I've got the incense burning, which is a key component of your show.
Bye.
Setting the mood. It smells good in here. It
Setting
smells
the
like
mood.
copal. Um, So
Nice.
why don't we start? I'm going to just pan around and look at the different artwork while you talk about it. But why don't we just start with you introducing yourself and introducing the exhibition? Um, and I'll just mention now, this show is on view for another like week. So it's coming to a close.
Oh,
We've got the last weekend of East, the Awesome Studio Tour ahead of us, so it's a great opportunity to see it in person if you guys haven't seen it in person, to those of you who are watching. But yeah, I'll let you take it, Diego.
um, yeah. My name is Diego. Would you
Yeah.
just introduce myself? Yeah. An interdisciplinary artist. I don't really, I didn't study art. I don't really know how to approach it like in the academic terms, but yeah, I'm self-taught and I primarily have been working mostly in sculpture, but I have a background in mostly painting and murals, and I do sound stuff too. And yeah, I have a lot of roots uh, in Mexico and the border, and I grew up in South Texas and moved to Austin about 20 years ago, and yeah, was there for a while and
Nice.
in the Bay.
Well, there's
Yeah.
like a ton to cover in the show. I feel like um, let's see, there's, kind of five different key areas of the show. They're all obviously very connected and clearly your work. Um, but I think let's start with the overall aesthetic. And the thing that jumps out to me most is like the blue tarps and the buckets and the bungee cords. Uh, why were those choices made?
Um, they are kind of, they suggest the idea of like elements of being like at a tianguis, which is like, like a supermarket or like a flea market or something like that. Um, and for me, it was kind of like, I don't know, riffing off a little bit off of, I like the piece by Barbara Kruger. It's like I shop, therefore I am, which is kind of like the idea of like consuming to fill voids, and you know, the uh, that's kind of what the title is in a lot of ways. Como que buscaba is a term is something what a merchant would say is like, what are you looking for? And that kind of became like a very meta idea for me, just sort of like, what am I looking for? What void am I filling? Like what? And yeah, and I really feel at home when I go to Tianguis. It's just like, and also it is to fill your home with a bunch of shit like your produce and your soap and get your blankets and pillows, and like you can get everything at the Tianguis. So it's sort of like where everyone goes to you know procure all their home
Yeah.
essentials. So yeah, I'm kind of just in a very like uh, sort of market
And I
centric
think
way.
the two most like obvious areas of the show that are modeled after Tiangi's are the wall that I was just looking at with the three larger pieces, and then this, and I think
Mhm.
just because, let's start here to get into the specifics. What are we looking at?
Those are incense holders and candelabras, and they um, are kind of meant to, like, the way it's displayed, it's meant to mimic the way, things are displayed sometimes by merchants. Um, Very like makeshift and I think really beautiful. Um, but the sculptures themselves are meant to sort of mimic the general shape of like Huitlacoche, and like Huitlacoche kind of became an archetype for a lot of the the sculptural concepts for most of the pieces, because they're all made of mostly the same material, um, with the exception of the furniture. But the furniture is modeled off of the same material. It's just like a
And
lot
just
more
just for
sturdy
those who
material.
don't know, because
But
I didn't know before this exhibition, what is Huitlacoche?
oh yeah, um, well, the gringos call it corn smut. It's a corn fungus. It's like it's a gall that grows off of corn, and which would, by you know maybe somebody wouldn't know what it was, they might discard it, but it's harvested and consumed, and it's considered just like a normal. People say it's a delicacy, but it's not really a delicacy in Mexico. It's like literally just like, you know, it's like having green beans, or you know,
Oh, nice.
it's just like
Okay.
a staple. It's a normal thing.
And your idea
Yeah.
for pursuing Huitlacoche is this idea. I really liked the sort of like metaphor that I think a lot of artists can like that a lot of artists would understand this idea of starting with Huitlacoche and then, polishing it.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to you about it recently, about like how the way it became an archetype, and for me it was like I was in Mexico City in residency, and kind of already had a bunch of different sculptural uh, like pieces that came from this sort of design. I've made a lot out of silicone, actually, that are believe they're just like they're vibrators, and but it came out of this idea to, like, you know you can sit on them, you can make them into furniture, and so the concept is sort of like around the idea is based around this, like, Huitlacoche is something that is maybe by traditional standards, or from another perspective, like something that's discarded, but it's also something that, it's a fungus that is within its own controlled environment, can be honed in and like refined and consumed, and propagated and shared. So yeah, I think about that in regards to like my ideas whenever I'm like just sketching something out, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe this does not look edible or consumable or like shareable. It looks kind of weird and shitty, and just scrap it. But yeah, I got really curious about what would happen if you just kind of keep refining it and manipulating it, and propagating it, and just sort of like, you know coming up with like ways to investigate it, I
Yeah.
guess, and
Starting
manipulate
with
it.
like a
So
rough idea and
yeah.
just like getting it better and better and better and better. I love that.
Yeah.
And that idea, we're going to skip out on the wall, on this wall for a second, just because we're talking about this idea of polishing an idea and Huitlacoche. We'll talk about this wall first. So to the viewers, what we're looking at here, the object on the floor is a coffee table. And then the objects on the wall are actually stools that can be, they're disassembled stools right now, but they can be assembled into stools. That metal bar comes apart, it goes into the bottom of that round object above it, and it can be functional. So how does I guess we'll start with like, how does this relate to that idea of polishing? And then how did you come up with this idea to like explore furniture?
Oh yeah, well that came about through that furniture concept came from just being in residency in Mexico City, and that's when sort of like the whole concept of like the archetypal uh, aspect of like we'd like Ocho becoming this sort of uh, like yeah, turning them into a piece basically, and I think the idea of it becoming furniture came from originally, like I said before, I have sculptures that I did at a previous residency that were all made out of silicone. They're silicone sculptures. Um, and I have like little insertable bullets in the back that are also attached to like a remote control. So they're essentially like vibrators, and they're, you know, that idea came from like, it's from a whole other concept, but I thought about, you know, they evolved into, well, if you can sit on them, why not just like add different kinds of armature, like, you know, and but then it kind of tied together with my sort of, you know, the concept for the whole show around you know, homeostasis and finding like a home in within yourself with like, you know, when you're seeking or filling voids. So, you know, might as well just kind of like take your shoes off, relax, and be at home with that. And so, yeah, it's kind of very tongue in
And
cheeky stuff. Um,
yeah,
so that's where the
and what is the
about.
material?
The material is calcite and resin. The only reason there's calcite in there is to because the resin, when if you pour it for like at a certain thickness, it as it cures, the temperatures are so drastic that it can crack the resin. So the calcite not only gives it this weight, but also it's to keep the resin from cracking as it cures. So it's calcite resin, and then the legs are made out of bent steel that are meant to mimic sort of like, you know, cowboy like vaquero boots, and the finish is on the sculpture are chrome or
Yeah,
chrome
it's
plating
amazing.
with
Yeah, what is a
pigmented chrome.
chroming process?
I don't know. It's a very nerdy alchemical process. It's essentially like a wash with lots of different uh, like like uh, applications onto the surface that activate with each other. They kind of create these chemical reactions that deposit silver onto the surface, and then you just kind of yeah wash it off and seal it with uh, really shiny
Yeah, they're
clear coat.
beautiful. It's mesmerizing to look at this. I mean, whether you're looking at them on the wall or looking straight down at this one, I mean, it's mirror finish nearly. Um, and then it's really nicely like pigmented in this pink and blue, which we see in a lot of your chromed work, all these different colors. Why did you make those color
Mhm.
choices?
Well, first with you know because I have all kinds of different colors, but first for this concept, I specifically just wanted it to be like cool colors that uh, like uh, the blues and purples are kind of meant to, you know, suggest Huitlacoche, like literally. Um, and then the other colors I'm just kind of playing around with, and like on the label of the actual pigments, they're candy names, so it's like candy pink, candy orange. So the other ones that are like, um, you know, not those colors of Huitlacoche, I've just been calling them caramelos or dulces because I mean, that's also sold a lot in Tianguis, and just kind of, you know, trying to figure out
They're
ways to tie
definitely
things
like the
together.
coolest incense
It's
holders and candelabras I've ever seen in my life. They're amazing.
yeah.
So
Thank you.
with this idea of Tiangu's coming back up too, let's move on to this wall and what inspired the work on this wall? Like what is bimbo? What is squirt? What is this object in the middle? And why are they displayed this way?
Um, yeah, I think Bimbo and like I don't know. I think it's I'm trying to find like I'm not a very uh I don't I'm not very versed in color theory, and so um a lot of it came out of just being resourceful with like what I have to work with, and I just I was in residency and I had like very limited colors, and a lot of my color theories informed through you know just like memory and things like that, like that are that I am attracted to, or that just kind of like trigger my memory and I'm fascinated with. And I had red, blue. I was like, oh my gosh, Bimbo. And yeah, these the way it's packaged is sort of like I guess I'm playing around with the idea of like marketability and like also just like very tongue in cheeky, making fun of myself as an artist, trying to like survive really, and kind of like putting my ideas in a nice pretty little package, and selling it. And um but yeah, the shapes are kind of very irregular, and it's all tying into sort of this similar idea. It's like I kind of just play around with the way the shapes come about are very organic. I just kind of let it happen, and then after that I really manipulate it by painting on it, and then just like add all these embellishments like the packaging and the graphics and stuff. So it kind of plays into this sort of experiential concept of like diasporic experience of like where some things have happened that are kind of out of my control, and then after that it's my responsibility and duty to sort of like manipulate my own circumstances, and face my circumstances. And so yeah, it's very meta. You never get it just
Yeah.
from like looking at a square
Um,
package. But and then the center one is kind of like it's very it's meant to sort of like suggestive of like an action figure kind of character. For me, like I don't know, it's kind of suggesting this sort of like color pattern of Jorge Campos, who's like a very famous like soccer player in Mexico. Um, and the background has got like Chacmul, it's like a very popular pre-Columbian character. It's like all over um, like Mesoamerica, and and yeah, also he's like very distorted. It's kind of like warping, and so it's packaged kind of like an action figure, and action figures are sort of like something to be like idolized or look up to, and so for me it's sort of like this attempt at like you know trying to connect with like what I'm idolizing, and like who my heroes were, and like where I lost my you know where the OG heroes are come from, like if you remove the idea of colonization in like my history, or due to colonization, like why it looks so distorted and things like that. So
I
yeah,
think the
it's
thing that
playing
strikes
around with
me
that.
about this show a lot is due to the irregular shapes and the way that the things are displayed, the artwork is displayed on these tarps, there is like this sort of like humbleness to the work that I really connect with. And yet at the same time, just from talking with you, I understand like how complicated it is to make these things. Uh, how to
Mm.
like I understand the choices, but maybe like this piece, like what is the interior object that's inside the vacuum seal? And then like, you know, how did you vacuum seal
Yeah,
this? And how did you
yeah.
connect all these dots? How did you learn all these different things? And yeah,
Well, that one is like I that one came when I was that piece came together like at when I was in residency at the Line, and it was kind of like an homage to like the person who introduced me to that residency is actually happened to be the first resident, and it's
Hmm.
my friend
Hmm.
Stafe. I don't, you probably know Stafe, but it's kind of like an homage to them, and they like, have this process, a really interesting process where they like sew stitching patterns. It's basically the shape that you're seeing is basically a pocket that's been sewn into fabric, and then it's the shape becomes a form, or it becomes like a three-dimensional shape by injecting like expandable foam into the pocket, and so then I just kind of peel the fabric like a banana, and then I start treating it with different skins and resins and paint and stuff like that. And then yeah, it's been vacuum formed with PEC. I think that's what it's called. It's like a recycled plastic. Um, Shout out to my friend Ilya, who I helped produce this vacuum former with back in the day. And yeah, I got to use it for the first time, like just
Yeah.
barely in July, because pandemic. So yeah.
And there's one last piece in the show that is really what you're sort of met with when you walk into your exhibition, which is this wall. Um, Sorry?
Yeah, make, I should
This is
make
amazing.
more of
Yeah.
those. I like
So
those.
could you like give us a title and maybe talk about the pattern and the choice of color?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the title is Talavera Pocha, which just Pocha means like, it's what I learned is like, somebody who's been in in out of their country for too long and speaks broken Spanish, so or can't really speak the language right. And Talavera is just it's like a style of tiling in Puebla, and um, it's very distorted. It's a rendition of like tiling that's been distorted, and it's also not necessarily the tiling technique. It's not ceramic. It's actually suggesting, if you zoom in, the surface is kind of like a stucco surface, like like a traditional like stucco wall. So it's kind of this idea of like, it's I get what you're saying, but it's not quite the right language kind of thing, and it's very distorted. So it's very, again, tongue in cheeky, and so yeah, it's meant to look like tile, but it's not quite tile,
Yeah.
and
Not supposed to go
yeah,
on the wall necessarily, but it is.
yeah, yeah, totally. It's just like a very distorted concept. It's like, if you've been you've been you know shown how this language is or whatever, and you've been taught this language, and you've been gone for so long that like you kind of forget to speak that language, and so it's like you know a really poor execution of, I mean, it's yeah, it's kind of like, um I don't know if you've ever seen those videos of like bands. It's like something shredding, like Beach
Hmm.
Boys shred, or and it's like people playing music really poorly because I don't know. It's just, but it's like played poorly really well. So that's kind
Yeah.
of like a funny. I mean,
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know.
this
Maybe.
isn't like the pattern perfectly laid down onto a perfectly flat surface, but it's still beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it went really well with like the Mexican
Right.
ink in the
Luis
background, and
Barraga, right?
like kind of.
Is the architect Luis Barraga?
What'd you say? Yeah, it's Luis Barragan.
Um,
Yeah.
well, the exhibition's beautiful. We've got just over a week left for people who want to see it. There is the East Austin Studio Tour, which is in its last week this week. Um, the detail, Diego, of your work is really fine. The finish of this work is like beautiful, and it needs to be seen from so many different angles, I feel like, to really appreciate it. Um, the candelabras and incense holders are just, like I said before, the coolest candelabras and incense holders I've ever seen. Um, the furniture, I'm going to later on this week make a post where I assemble one of these chairs or two of these chairs so people can see the set as a whole set, actually, in its functional form. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to add, Diego, before we sign off?
No, just, shout out to my
Yeah.
family and friends. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks
Thank you,
for having
Diego.
me.
I look forward to seeing you probably tomorrow. Yeah. Diego will be in the
Okay, yeah, for
gallery in
sure.
and out for those of you who visit the exhibition. And November 25th is the last day, so don't miss it. Uh, yeah, thank you so much.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank
everybody
you
for
so
watching.
much.
Have a good day.